Saturday, you're going to be at the New Waterford Beer Wine Festival, just south of here in New Waterford, Ohio, man. So you take me back to your start, CJ. What, give me your background in music. What was there like a gateway band that made you want to play music kind of growing up?
Oh man, my first favorite band ever was Creedence Clearwater Revival. My dad was a huge fan. I just fell in love with John Fogerty, and that was like the first stuff I ever learned on guitar. When I was like 7 years old, I started playing guitar, and just kind of fell in love with classic rock kind of stuff. And then when I was in middle school, I found out about country music in Nashville and took a little trip. My parents took us on a trip up here, and we went to the Grand Ole Opry. And I remember seeing some guys at night and thinking, man, I really like that. And so that kind of opened my world to country music. And then I had a sister and an uncle who were about 10, 12 years older than me. And they liked like 90s rock kind of stuff. So that was kind of like all the stuff that kind of like I was getting into music, at a young age. And I loved all that kind of stuff. So, so I started writing songs when I was like 12. Of course, they were terrible. Moved to Nashville right out of high school. Went to Belmont University for songwriting and music business, and got my first songwriting deal right before I graduated to write songs for a company that Brad Paisley owned called Seagale Music. And then I was over there for 7.5 years at another company for the last 3 years, and written songs for Morgan Wallen, Jason Aldean, Justin Moore. Had a #1 with a buddy of mine, Jameson Rogers, and and putting out my own music as well for the last probably almost 8 years now myself. So, and touring, I've gotten to open for people like Lynyrd Skynyrd, 38 Special, Hank Jr., and a who's who of country music artists as well. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
How do you go about getting into sort of the songwriting business? I mean, you mentioned writing. You had a couple #1 hits that you were a part of. But yeah, I mean, how does a musician kind of go about getting into that world?
Man, for me, obviously being in Nashville was a huge part of my part of it. I think for writing country music, most of the business is based here, and really just kind of getting in and networking. Both of the guys that I've had #1s with, when I wrote that song and or they recorded it, they were not famous. And, so, getting in early, getting in with artists on the ground floor, getting to know people and just kind of seeing what happens. I think they could jokingly call it a 10-year town. I say you got to give yourself, 5 to 10 years of just kicking around, whether it's LA or here, whatever music town you want to be in, just to at least to be behind the scenes. On the artist front, I feel like with TikTok and everything that's going on, you can kind of be anywhere as long as your product's good, at a good enough level. I mean, I don't think Zach Bryan ever moved to a music town. He just was writing his own stuff and on TikTok, and was able to, find an audience and then, sign a record deal with Warner Nashville. Whether he's happy about the decision or not, he seems to not be. But you know what I mean. So there's different paths on the artist front, but on the songwriting front, you really got to be around the artists, and obviously they're mostly centrally located in country music in Nashville.
Was there like a holy shit moment when you wrote, or when one of these songs started taking off up the charts? Like which one was for, as far as the Morgan Wallen and the Jameson Rogers, which one of those happened first?
The Morgan Wallen one happened first. So yeah, that was really crazy because he recorded the song, like May or June of 2017, and then I just can't, like, every month, it was funny, I would get an update. It was like, hey, Morgan recorded the song. I was like, oh, no way. And he actually his manager heard it at a songwriter festival with one of my co-writers about a month before that. So manager heard the song. About a month later, they officially recorded it. About a month later, they were like, hey, which Morgan hadn't had a hit yet. He was, he had a record deal, but was unknown. A month later, they're like, hey, Florida Georgia Line is going to feature on this song, which at that time they were the biggest act in the genre. So it was like, oh, damn, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. And then about another month later, they're like, hey, it's officially going to be the first single. It comes out in November. So this is probably August or September at this point. So I'm like, oh, dang, all right, I got to wait. And then it came out in November, and it came out, and people had a positive, first thing about it. But, for songs to go #1, it takes a really long time. So It came out in November. I actually opened for Morgan at Stoney's in Vegas in no, in maybe November or December. I think it was early December that year, and there was like 50 people there. He was still like on the way up. But by that next summer, probably June or July, the song went #1, and yeah, man. At that point, most people knew the song. And what's funny is a lot of people were like, "Oh, you got that new Florida Georgia Line #1," and I was like, "Well, it's actually a Morgan Wallen song featuring Florida Georgia Line," which is crazy. So now that Morgan Wallen has become like, I would say the biggest, if not, one of the top 3 country artists in the format. It's been really cool to be, to be an early part of his story and a part of one of his biggest songs. And it's really fun for me to get to play that song every night. I'm a big Skynyrd fan, and dream mine was to get to open for them. Actually, one of the week the song went #1, I was actually out opening for Lynyrd Skynyrd, so that was really a really cool thing. Name dropping Freebird in that song was a cool little kind of just full circle moment for me. And yeah, man, so it's fun getting to play that song at all our shows. And we actually do a little mix up where we throw a Freebird in at the end of that song. It's kind of fun. But yeah, man, that was definitely like when that song went #1 and I was opening for Skynyrd. And I think a little bit after that, I got to make my debut at the Grand Ole Opry. All of those things kind of happened in a pretty quick amount of time. And I was just like, wow, this is really crazy. So it's been fun.
Nice. What are you looking for when you're writing for yourself and then also writing kind of for other artists? How much do those worlds kind of cross over, and what exactly kind of are you sort of sitting out to do when you start the songwriting process?
If I'm in a room with 2 other songwriters and we're just trying to write the best song, I feel like we're just trying to let the best song win. And obviously, if I'm kind of heading the ship that day, I feel like I'm naturally going to write something that feels like me, just because I'm being involved in the lyrics, phrasing, melody. If there's another artist in the room, then obviously I want, and the goal is to write for them. I'm obviously wanting them to be happy. So I'm obviously trying to help out wherever I can. But I feel like you want to let an artist somewhat run with an idea that they're excited about and have a lyric and phrasing that fits what they do, which, unless you've really, really studied that artist, you kind of got to let them lead a little bit on some of those things. But I just, I want whatever artist I'm working with to be happy about whatever we write and hopefully record the song. I've been lucky to have written some songs with a lot. The 2 #1s were outside cuts, but I've had cuts that I have written with some younger cats like Ian Munsick and Travis Denning and some of those guys. And, I think we were really just trying to write the best song, but I think that, I think on the days that we wrote the songs that those guys liked, we were writing something that felt very much in their alley. And I'm just like in a support role, but, very much helping out. Just writing lyrics and trying to make sure that the melody is something that they gel with and, something that they like. Cause as a songwriter, it is kind of a service industry, obviously you're putting your heart and soul into it, but you are writing stuff for a mass market of fans. And then if you're writing for another artist, you're writing stuff that they would want to say. So not always, you're not always saying something you want to say, but I don't do that a ton. I really do a lot of stuff where I get in the room and it's just 3 songwriters, but a lot of times I'm kind of more the artist in the room, which is fun for me to just kind of get to do my thing and then have some people kind of helping me out on, a lyric or a melody or phrasing or something. If we, and collaborating in Nashville is a really fun way to write songs. I really enjoy the process and everything that goes with it.
And what's it like when you approach your solo stuff? Is it a similar sort of thing? I mean, what I guess how does that work?
Well, so what's crazy about, technically being a published songwriter for the last over 10 years is that, they almost call it like a lunch pail kind of songwriter. So I've kind of ridden that line between artist and lunch pail songwriter where, I'm writing songs 3 to 5 days a week. So naturally, some of those songs just end up being things that I really resonate with. And every time I go to record an EP or a record or whatever, I've mostly done like 5-6 song EPs over the last couple of years, just because it's just more economical. But I'm always going in at, every time I'm going in to record, I just look at like every song I've ever written, I can go, I'm like, what do I keep going back to? Like, man, what's that song? Like I just recorded a project and I had a song that I wrote like a month before the project. And I had a song that I wrote 11 years ago while I was in college that I just kept skipping over. And it was somebody that was involved in the past that I was just like, I don't know, that song's maybe a little too rock, a little too, you know what I mean? So it's just like, it's just never quite fit another project. So I've always wanted to record that song, and this just felt like the right project for it. And then I got newer stuff too. So it's been cool to, but yeah, I mean, basically everything I've ever written's on the table. So, and it's fun to just kind of dig through. And yeah, like I said, one thing was a month old, and some things were older. So it's fun to, and trying to place like, obviously every time I go in, I normally try to do at least 5 songs in the studio that day. So when I went in and did this 5-song batch, I'm not sure if it's going to turn into an album or not, but I did 5 songs and I'm like, all right, well, I want all 5 songs to like kind of feel like a project. Cause even though today they want you to treat every song like a single, I like the songs to meld together as if like when I eventually do upload it as an EP or a record, when somebody listens to it down, they're like, oh, that feels like a cohesive batch of tunes that like, where even though I wrote some of those songs a while back, like have it be like, oh, I can feel like where this dude was at this point in his life, and just kind of, I don't know, kind of go together. So that's kind of where my head's at with some of that.
Is it challenging to decide what songs go to other artists and what songs to keep for yourself?
Because a lot of times people are like, why didn't you keep Up Down? And what's funny is I wrote that with another artist named Hardy, and he had actually played in my band for a couple years. He had just left playing with my band and was going to be doing his own thing. And he was like, man, I kind of want to record that song. And I was like, I had just recorded an EP, and one of them was a song called Coming My Way, and Up Down and Coming My Way were like kind of similar vibes. And I was like, well, dude, why don't you do Up Down? I'll do Coming My Way. So he actually played that song at the Songwriter Festival. But a lot of times I let my companies pitch everything I have. So and I always say, if someone picks up a song, I'll go write another one. I actually had that with Jason Aldean. He recorded a song of mine called I Don't Drink Anymore. And I was actually thinking about recording that song. And when he recorded that song, it was crazy. I was going to be in the studio just a couple weeks after him. And he only heard the song like 4 days before he went into the studio and ended up recording it, which is pretty fast. Usually songs get held for a couple months. So that one it was like on a Thursday, his producer heard it on a Friday, he heard it, and on Monday he recorded it. And I was like, oh dang, well, I was going in to cut 5 songs. I got to write a new one. And I ended up writing a song that I felt was even more worked for me than that song. And I love playing that song too. But so, if that happens, I think it's a great problem to have, because obviously I'm thrilled if I had Jason Aldean record a song of mine. So I'm usually, until the moment I record something, pretty down for other artists to get their hands on something, especially if they're, big artists that, where the song has the potential to obviously, maybe make it on radio or a big artist record. So I'm always giving my songs away to especially artists with record deals and big artists, and then I have a ton of buddies that are, on the smaller level, where I've had songs that have been sitting around and they just go like, man, I could really do a song feels like this. I go dig back through the catalog and send them stuff. And I'm like, hey man, like this one's been sitting on the shelf for a minute. Like obviously if you could do something with it, that'd be really cool. So I had a lot of friends do that, which is fun too, to give songs to buddies and stuff. So yeah, you just never know.
If you could write for any artist, who would it be?
Oh man.
Like, is there like a bucket list artist? You know what I mean? Like just somebody that'd be like, this would be so cool to write a song, whether it be like maybe Skynyrd or Fogerty or something like that.
Any of those guys, I would love to be able to like collaborate with or have record a song. I know that, Johnny Van Zant and Donnie had done that Van Zant country record back in the day. And a hero of mine that I get to work with a lot, Jeffrey Steele, wrote a bunch of those songs with them. I hope that maybe they do another record one day. Maybe I can be a part of that with Jeff or something. But I don't know. Obviously John Fogerty I'd love to collaborate with. But as far as like modern country music, I mean, I'm a big Eric Church fan. I would love to work with him one day. I used to say Jason Aldean all the time. I'm really lucky that he recorded one, and Morgan Wallen being at the top of the format, very fortunate to have written a big one for him. So I don't know, man. I mean, anybody who makes great music, I love collaborating with. So I'm really open for to really working with anybody.
Mm. You mentioned opening for Lynyrd Skynyrd earlier, and I know you have a couple shows coming up later this month where you're doing a whole bunch of Skinner tracks, right?
Yeah, dude. So that's gonna be really fun. It's the weekend before Halloween. We're gonna do like 45 minutes of my stuff and then 60 to 90 minutes of Skinner. So yeah, it's gonna be kind of for Halloween. I'm thinking that if it goes really well, we might. Obviously, it's a lot of work working up all these tunes because those songs are just they got a lot of like interesting parts. And we're really trying to do them as close to the records as we can. I got a really killer band. So we're actually going to be playing a couple of them at New Waterford, trying a couple of them out. So I'm really excited for that. But yeah, we're going to be doing that whole show for the first time um, the weekend before Halloween in Louisiana. It's a couple hometown kind of things. So Baton Rouge and Natchez, Mississippi, and then Ruston, Louisiana. And Baton Rouge and Natchez, I'm from Baton Rouge, and then Natchez almost feels like a second hometown for me because I love going up there and playing. I got a lot of friends up there. So yeah, so we're gonna do that, and we might take that show on the road next year. I think it might be kind of fun if it goes well to do a show, or I'm calling the one that down there called Solar Play Skinner. So I'm gonna do 45 minutes to an hour of my stuff, and then 60 to 90 of Skinner, and have like a kind of 3 hours worth of time taken up. And obviously, I would say Lynyrd Skynyrd is possibly, between them and Creedence, my two favorite bands of all time. So I wear a hat normally when I play that kind of looks like the Ronnie hat, and um, yeah, I just always loved Skinner, and I feel like I do a pretty cool job with the tune. So I feel like all my buddies back home that are going to get that first taste of that show are gonna enjoy it, and I think it's gonna be something cool. So we might do that some more next year, depending on how it goes. But yeah, I'm excited for New Waterford. I think we're gonna do 3 or 4 of them there. So yeah, it'll be fun.
So can you talk a little bit more about what it was like opening for Skynyrd?
Yeah, man. I mean, that was a dream come true. It was really cool. I was really glad that, we got to catch Gary Rossington before he passed away. Johnny Van Zant watched part of our set from side stage. And, it's really cool to get to just like meet and chat with, Ricky Medlock's, unbelievable player. And all the other guys that play with him, like Peter Keys, are really unbelievable. And, no, it's an amazing show. And those songs are just, they're like obviously there's so many people's lives, but my parents being such huge fans, they were a big part of my childhood too, even though they came out 30 years before I was, or 20 years whatever before I was before I was a kid and experiencing those songs. But they're just such timeless classics and such great music, and obviously I've covered a lot of them over the years in my life. But yeah, I mean, we got to do I'm trying to remember how many shows we actually got to do with them. We actually our first show back out of COVID was Gulf Coast Jam, and that was I think that was the last year before Gary Rossington passed away. So got to see them one more time at that big festival. But then pre-COVID, 2018 and 2019, we got to do a bunch of weekends with them, which was really cool. And yeah, man, and those shows were awesome because it was them, 38 Special, and then one. It was usually them two, and then a couple nights Hank Jr. and Cheap Trick were on there too. So that was really cool. Like, Cheap Trick, and I've got to do a lot of shows with Hank Jr. and that's always a blast. His crowds are amazing, and he's a character, so he's really fun to get to play with. But yeah, man, all of those acts were idols of mine. So that was really an awesome tour to get to be a very tiny opening act for a small part of, but definitely bucket list stuff.
Yeah, man. Talk about some songwriting heavy hitters that you're on the same bill with. That's pretty awesome. It's got to be a huge honor to be a part of that.
It really was. I definitely was kind of pinching myself that whole weekend, especially with one of the weekends being the one where the Morgan Wallen song, and we were getting to play it live at the shows, and having a number one song. Obviously, it was as a writer and not as an artist. So that's the next goal, is the number one song as an artist. But still working on that one. But yeah, man, I've been super blessed to get to open for some of my heroes and write songs for some of the next batch of everybody, of the next cruise. The people coming up now, they're looking up to. I mean, I was looking up to Jason Aldean, but they're looking up to the Morgan Wallens and all those people. I, obviously like to think of myself as somewhat of a contemporary, since I've been releasing music at least as long as a lot of those people. But blessed to get to write songs for those people, and I love what they do, and it's a cool time. I feel like the country genre is really all over the place, and you can really do a little bit of anything as long as you can find a market for it. So it's a cool spot, and yeah, I'm excited to be putting out music and writing songs and on the road. Obviously, yeah, it took a couple days for us to find a time to get together,
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm excited to be out there.
Nice, man. I go a couple more here, brothers, and I'll let you go. And again, man, I appreciate the time. What would you say that country is the new rock in terms of genre? I mean, it kind of seems to sort of be skewing that way a little bit, and a lot of country shows are very, very rock kind of oriented and sort of
Yeah, I
definitely old school rock feel to a lot of them.
Yeah, dude. I mean, there's a good buddy of mine, Hardy, who I've mentioned a couple times. We wrote a lot. He's almost doing like a metal kind of thing, but he's got kind of some rock influences, and he kind of came to country a little bit later after listening to rock. I feel like there's a lot of people like that that kind of were from rural areas but grew up listening to rock, so they've got this cool thing where they're able to take their life experience of growing up country, but have these rock influences. And I don't know, man. It's definitely kind of seems to be the Wild West out there. I don't know if country's the new rock, because I think there is still cool rock music being made, but I think the boundaries of just what can happen via the country music genre. Obviously, you got things that are really poppy, really rappy. You got things like Hardy that are, almost metal. He's got Fred Durst and, featuring on songs. He had Zach Wilde on an album once, you know what I mean? So it's like the lines are just getting really, really blurred. There's this chick Royal Lynn that's like basically doing metal, but with like country lyrics and singing kind of over it. So there's a lot of people doing that thing, but then you got people like Zach Top who sound like 80s 90s country, and they're kind of bringing that back a little bit. So I think I think there's really room for anything, as long as there's like even 10 years ago, people are like, well, what is country? I'm like, as long as there's like one thing that can like kind of trace back, whether you just put pedal steel on a track or you're just singing about your dog and your truck leaving you, or whatever it is that can be country. I think as long as you got a little bit of a thread in there, you could be country. So yeah, it's a wild spot.
So you mentioned a little bit of kind of what you were going to do. We mentioned you were going to play a couple Skinner tracks this weekend. I would assume your set's going to be a mix of stuff that you've written for other artists, and then some of your solo stuff. But yeah, could you just give us like kind of a quick preview of what people can expect in New Waterford this Saturday?
Yeah, so I'm definitely gonna play some of the hits. I'm gonna play some of the Skinner stuff that we're working up. I've got some other fun covers that, I've just worked up and love playing over the years. A little taste of my influences, from Charlie Daniels to Montgomery Gentry to Zeppelin. Like, we got all kinds of random stuff thrown in there. And then tunes that I've released over the years myself as well. So it's a fun mix. I feel like we've got a really fun show put together, and I think everybody's going to love it. It's going to be a great time. My buddy Mark McKay is opening the show, and yeah, Garrett Owens is opening as well, and the Berries. So I think it's going to be a fun day full of music, and I'm excited that I'm actually buddies with everybody that's on the lineup, which is really cool. And I think it's going to be a great day and a great show.
Well, nice, CJ. Well, again, CJ Solar headlining the New Waterford Beer and Wine Festival. That's this Saturday in New Waterford. But CJ, again, thank you, man, so much for the time, brother. And we'll catch you this weekend.
Sounds good, brother. Appreciate you having me.